Hey everyone, this is Julia, and this is episode number 54 of the Mixology Talk podcast. We've talked in the past about standard bar equipment, things like strainers, shakers, jiggers, the normal stuff. But when working on unique craft cocktails in a high-volume environment, you sometimes have to get a little bit creative with the tools that you're using. So this week, Chris is taking us through some of the tools and equipment that he's used, and sometimes stolen from the kitchen, to create original drinks at his bar. And if you're thinking of trying some of this stuff at your own bar, definitely head on over to mixologytalk.com/54 for the show notes for all the links. So let's get into it. So, Chris, when you worked in craft cocktail bars in the past, you always had the problem of having to create fancy drinks, but always having to keep up with the high volume nature of the bar, right?
Right. And it was a pretty busy bar. And most importantly, a lot of the cocktails that we had were very culinary driven, since it wasn't a really kind of a high end restaurant at the time. So we were doing a lot of really innovative stuff, using a lot of techniques I had to develop through, asking some chefs and stuff. So it was like a kid in a candy store with all the equipment they were turning me on and that I got to play with on a daily basis. It was pretty cool.
That is pretty awesome. Yeah. So can you walk us through some of the equipment that you used that may be different from what we're used to seeing behind the bar?
Yeah. So there's a big difference from like home, making cocktails at home and doing production level cocktails. And what I mean by production level is bar quantities. If you're going through 50 drinks, in an hour, you
can't make every single.
Needs to be very different than at home.
Yeah,
you
can't.
Time.
You can't make every single one on a one-off basis. You would just drown.
Right, absolutely. So in the past, I've used just hand squeezers behind the bar, and they're really good. And once you become very adept at it, you can fly through juicing pretty quickly. But
so this is for juicing citrus.
Citrus, right? Yeah, but when you start to do really high production, a couple hundred cocktails a night. You need to start to batch all that juice out beforehand. And actually, the juice does taste better after a couple hours standing.
I read that somewhere. Yeah. So this is something that I remember. I probably shouldn't say this, but I remember you complaining about is sometimes that you would arrive for your shift and there would be no juice prepped.
Right.
And you would just be totally hosed for the rest of your shift.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, you're fighting an uphill battle then.
Just tell everyone no citrus. Sorry, right. We ran out.
Sorry, no
half
citrus
the menu's
today.
Gone.
Right, but. So yeah, we used a couple different juicers. I think in the restaurant I worked at, we had no less than 4 or 5 juicers.
Different kinds of
different
juicers?
Types of juicers.
Just for variety.
Yeah, so you had the standard one behind the bar, the hand juicer, just in case you run out and you have to actually start hand squeezing on the fly when you run out of juice. But then you would also have a commercial like press.
Is that the one that sits on top of the table and it looks like one of those old can openers?
Right, exactly. So it's basically just a giant lever that you pull down and it just compacts the juice or the fruit and juices it. And they're really fantastic. And I've used those in high volume bars before.
They're fast.
And you can get really quick at them, right?
Plus you get really sexy arms.
Just the one arm.
Just the one.
Right.
If you see bartenders with one really buff arm,
right, exactly.
It's not what you think. It's actually the juicer.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say about that.
So that's for higher volume than the hand juicer.
Right.
But it's still just for citrus.
Right, just for citrus.
But you don't only juice citrus behind the bar.
No, and you can do a lot of different juicing. One of the other things that Julie actually got me for, I think it was a Christmas or a birthday present, is a juice extractor. So this is just exactly what it sounds like. You can put anything in there and it will juice it. So like celery, that's how I make this celery soda.
We made it pretty angry when we put the rhubarb in.
Rhubarb, not very happy
Probably not
about that.
recommended on that one.
And the reason, because there's so much fiber in it, which brings me on to my next juicing machine, which is the masticating style of juicer.
And this one is like the lean main juicing machine. Like you cannot face this thing,
This
right?
thing is kind of ridiculous. You will have to clean it. I did juice rhubarb in this thing, but basically imagine what are the things that you throw trees in and it just like devours
like a
them.
wood chipper?
Like imagine a wood chipper with angry teeth and everything like that, but for juicing.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So you could put kind of anything in there and it just will separate the fiber from everything else, and it's pretty crazy.
So the reason you would get a juicer like that is really just to have the variety. I think I've heard of this kind of juicer as being what a lot of folks in the juicing, as in like juice for meals, community likes to have, because they put all kinds of like celery and kale and all kinds of greenery into that, and they want to turn it into a smoothie. Well, in your case, you may be working behind a bar when you're doing crazy stuff, and so you just want to have the flexibility, right?
Right, exactly. And I've used this for many different things, but absolutely imagine, it's basically just going to chew the whole thing up and then extract all the juice it can and leave you with a pile of fiber on one side and juice on the other.
So I have a funny story about this. This was actually with our juice extractor. We juiced a bunch of strawberries, and the juice came out one side and the pulp went out the other. And the pulp, it really looked very appetizing. It was bright
like a fruit
red.
roll up almost.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, great, I'll just turn that into like a sauce and use that on pancakes. It was unbelievably gross. There was no flavor whatsoever. I really should have tasted it.
All the sugar and all the flavor was
Oh
gone.
my gosh.
Yeah,
you know,
all you were left with
it
was
looked
pulp.
so appetizing. It really did. I mean, yes, it was like strawberry mush, but it looked like I could make a sauce out of it. Don't do what I did.
That's funny. I remember you telling me that story.
It was so gross.
So disappointing too.
It was so disappointing. It was like the soul of the strawberry had been sucked out, which I guess is exactly what happened. But,
yeah.
So that's my lesson. If you're making cocktails, just throw away the pulp. There's nothing left for you there.
Yeah, and I know that there are a few bars that do really high volume. So they actually buy the Zoomex, I think it's what it's called. The big, huge freestanding juicers that you find in like
what is that?
hotels that do fresh squeezed juice. It basically has a basket of fruit on top of it, and you just push a button and it spits out. Chops it, squeezes it, and spits out a bunch of juice. I think I've
seen those at restaurants that do fresh squeezed orange juice.
Right. I know there's a couple of bars that I know of that actually use that for their juicing program.
Wow.
Because it's hands off and you come back, I don't even know, 20, 30 minutes
nonstop.
later, and you have gallons of juice.
Well, I know what it's like to sit there in front of 3 cases of 400 limes each. We've done a couple catering events, and I'll tell you right now, you definitely get sore arms, so I'm a little jealous of that machine.
Right. One of the other pieces of equipment that I take for granted home that I always wish I had is a what's called a chinois, or a bouillon strainer.
I think this is the one that just looks like a giant cone, right?
Yeah, it's basically a giant cone. Imagine a fine strainer with a lot more mesh and much bigger.
So what you're looking at here is ultra fine, an ultra fine strainer that just can handle ridiculous volume. It's not 3 inches big. It's like
it's probably
15
the mouth
inches.
Of it's probably 15 inches across.
So you can do a whole batch at once.
Right, exactly. And this is really great. The way I'd set this up is I would have my juicing machine spitting out juice into a canister, like a container that I would be holding it in. And in between those two things, I would put the chinois.
Oh, okay.
So then that way, when I lift the chinois, all of the pulp would be caught in the chinois and not inside the juice, so I wouldn't have to fine strain as much.
So you do fine strain even after you've juiced?
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, because you have to take out the ice particles.
Of
so
course.
That's why.
That makes sense.
But it will keep your fine strainer from clogging up during service. Every little bit will help it.
Oh, absolutely. If you can move the work upstream, that's definitely better.
Yeah, and this was probably one of the most versatile pieces of equipment that I had in the kitchen, just because you could use it for just about straining anything out, really. So syrups, infusions, you name it. This thing it's a workhorse I had during the last bar program.
You said it's got a really fine mesh, which would in theory mean it operates more slowly, right?
Theoretically, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you just kind of leave it going?
Just let it drip, yeah.
And it's so big that you don't have to attend to it.
Worry about it, exactly.
Got it. Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Go leave the strainer going and then go juice some more stuff.
Right, absolutely. And then if you need even more straining power, you could actually line it with cheesecloth, the chinois with cheesecloth. And it provides even more straining ability. So, like when I would make tomato water, that's one of the techniques that you can do is line the chinois with cheesecloth, put in a bunch of your tomato juice, basically, and just let it sit over time. It would take, a while.
Yeah.
But what happened would be it would be running almost clear at the very end of it.
I feel like when you were making that at home, when you were making tomato water at home, you left it overnight. Again, in lots of layers of cheesecloth in the fridge.
It in the fridge and just let it drip. Right.
So it definitely takes time.
Right.
You can't push it literally. It'll go its own speed.
Right.
So what about blenders? I think when I think about blenders, I obviously think of beach bars with neon blue margarita mix. I assume that's not what you were using at your craft bar.
No, but those, in order to have a blender that can chop up ice, it's got to be a beast of a blender. I mean, this thing has to be very, very powerful.
Well, and not only does it have to chop up ice, it has to do it dozens of times a shift, dozens of, every day of the week, every week of the year, nonstop. Right.
And it's been a long time since I've worked with a blender behind the bar, thank goodness. But behind the bar or in a production area, absolutely. You just want something really robust and powerful because you don't know what you're going to be throwing in this thing. I had one particular brand that I really enjoyed working with, and it made a huge difference in just the amount and speed that I could use.
So what makes a good blender? Like, are you looking for like RPMs? Are you looking for strength of the motor? Are you looking for a bigger carafe?
All of those things.
All of
absolutely. And then you throw in a quiet motor on top of that, then you're going to start to be really hard to find something like that.
And how quiet can you really get if you're chopping ice, right? Because ice banging around to the canister is going to be noisy.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's like how...
the nature of it.
Yeah. How quiet can you get a lawnmower,
Right, you're still chopping.
Right, exactly. So, but there are definitely a model that if I was doing blended cocktails in the front of the house, I would definitely start to look at, just because it's the most quiet version of and most powerful version of it.
Got it.
So,
and we'll include that link in the show notes, of course. So you were also telling me, Chris came home from work one day and he was just grinning ear to ear, which was pretty unusual in this bar because it was so darn busy. But he was explaining to me how he had somehow commandeered a sous-vide machine and a vacuum sealer from the kitchen and tried to explain to me what he was doing. And I don't remember the details, but I just remember how stinking happy you were.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool pair of machines. And when you're working in a restaurant, the theory is that you would vacuum seal meat in like the regular vacuum seal bags that you have at home, and then you would put it in basically temperature controlled water and cook it at a very specific temperature, and then get it down to a constant temperature of 1/10 of a degree. So really, really exact temperature.
Wow.
So the two pieces of equipment was obviously the vacuum sealer and then the sous-vide machine, which would basically just a heating motor that would pump water around.
And it keeps the water at a very exact temperature.
Very exact temperature, right. So those two things usually go hand in hand, because you throw a bunch of meat in a pot of water, you're just going to get soup.
You're going to need the bag. Yeah.
Right. So you usually find them side by side.
So what did you do? Remind me. I can't recall. What was it that you did with these two machines?
So I actually used them kind of separate, but in different ways. With the vacuum sealer, the cool thing you can do with that is you could do flash pickling. So you would have a pickling liquid and you could put it under vacuum and it would inject whatever you have in there with a pickling liquid. So then you could also start to do
So it's kind of like an infusion?
Kind of, but you're pushing it right into the cells.
Oh, wow.
So you would get like this really quick pickling, and you could pretty much pickle anything with that thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it would just be much faster than the usual method.
We were doing pickled watermelon rinds.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was really
for
refreshing.
Cocktails.
We did it for some of the food, and I experimented with it with cocktails as well as a garnish.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was really a lot of fun. You could do onions with it, cucumbers, and make really cool, crisp, lively, kind of vibrant pickles with that.
And if I remember correctly, you also used a vacuum sealer to make oleo saccharum, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Which is it's not related to pickling. It's a different sort of
right, exactly.
process.
So it's kind of a similar process, but I actually read this on Jeffrey Morgenthaler's blog, and it was an absolutely fantastic idea. So basically, you're just extracting oil using sugar. So you would put a bunch of lemon zest in a bag, fill it with sugar, put it under vacuum, so all of the oil would leach out into the sugar, and you're left with this oil paste, basically.
Amazingly
liquid.
Delicious sugar.
Yeah, so all that aroma just trapped in the sugar. It's a really, really beautiful thing to be able to incorporate into cocktails.
And then you can use that in a syrup, and you've just got that amazing aroma.
Right, exactly.
But that particular application does not use the sous vide machine.
No. You probably could, but you don't need to. You just put it in the fridge and wait it overnight, and you're done. But one of my funnest I can speak today. One of my most fun memories of the vacuum sealer was when watermelon season would come around. And the cool thing about a vacuum sealer, an industrial one versus the ones we have at home, is you can change up the amount of pressure that you're pulling. So I would turn down the pressure, put a bunch of watermelon cubes in the vacuum bags, add some syrup, add a little bit of orange bitters, and the vacuum would actually compress the watermelon. So think of watermelon as super light and kind of airy. It would compress it, so what would come out would be a meaty piece of watermelon, like meat.
So you like shrunk your watermelon?
Right. So I compacted it, pushed a lot of the water out, but the water that got replaced was the sugar syrup and orange bitters. So when you bit into the watermelon, it almost had the texture of tuna. It looked like tuna.
Oh my gosh.
But it had this really cool fragrant quality to it, and it was much sweeter than a regular watermelon. So we would use that as a garnish in the cocktail.
I wish I could say I was lucky enough to have tasted that. That sounds amazing.
It was really cool. We had a lot of... I really love... If I would have one piece of equipment at home, it would be that vacuum sealer. Just the variable pressure, you can do so much with that.
Note to self for Christmas presents.
Good luck. I think they're a good industrial one's probably about $1,000, probably two.
Okay, maybe it'll be your birthday and your Christmas present.
Man, I'm gonna have to be really good.
I'm gonna have to find that on Craigslist.
Such trouble.
So another thing you were telling me, and something that I have experienced, is just about wine keys. So being the wife of a bartender, wine keys are just absolutely everywhere in our house. And I quickly learned that not all wine keys are the same.
No, they're very different. And if anybody has been in the food service industry, you know that you go through probably more wine keys than you do shirts. I mean, I've probably gone through hundreds of wine keys in my we've got
career. Dozens around the house already, so I believe that.
Yeah, and I mean, they make them in all shapes and sizes. They make them goofy. I mean, they make them with the little foil cutters that have like a razor in them. They have the regular traditional knife. So the one I always advise people getting, and don't even bother experimenting with different ones, get the double hinge ones.
That's
double lever
important.
Action.
Yeah.
And the one thing to take a look at is to the little corkscrew, they call it a worm, is to get one with Teflon coating on it.
Interesting. Why is that?
If you're opening 50 bottles of wine a night, that Teflon coat just runs right through the cork. It doesn't grip it.
So it makes it a lot easier to do.
So fast. Oh my God. It's like the difference of driving a Hyundai versus a Ferrari. I mean, it basically pulls you into the cork.
Like butter.
Oh, it's great. Definitely, you want to get something with that Teflon worm on it.
Good to know. I don't think we have any of those at home, do we?
We might have one or two, but...
You're probably hiding it from me, aren't you?
Probably, yeah. But stay away from the shiny-looking ones, the stainless steel ones, because they'll just grip onto the cork, and you'll just end up destroying corks, or it's just so much slower, so...
Yeah, I could definitely remember a couple times I've done that. So the last thing that you mentioned actually has to do with closing down the bar for the evening.
Yeah, and there's a couple of cool pieces of equipment that I definitely recommend to any bartenders that are still wrapping their bottles in plastic wrap or their beer taps in plastic wrap. Especially with the beer tap one, just to help prevent fruit flies, there's a really cool product called a beer cap, and then on the end of the beer cap is a brush. So it'll kind of clean that, that couple of inches into the beer tap itself, and also close it off at the end of the night. And you just sanitize them when you're done, and then just rinse and repeat.
So it's like a plug with a brush on the end that you stuff in your beer taps.
Exactly. So imagine a bottle brush with a cap.
Oh.
That's it.
Well, that's civilized.
Yeah, it's really great. And they're very, very reasonable. And they're a great way just to kind of close down the bar real quick. Make sure you don't have any fruit flies.
And way faster than saran wrap.
Oh, and it's better for the environment.
Better in
too.
all sorts of ways, yeah.
Yeah, and then they also have bottle condoms too. It's a terrible description.
I'm pretty sure that's actually
what they're called,
pitcher,
yeah, that's what we called it. But the mental pitcher is exactly what it sounds like. They're just piece of plastic you put on top of your pour spouts, so that way you're not doing the same thing, wrapping your bottles in saran wrap every night.
Right.
And it's so much more effective than just saran wrap.
So there was two more things that we actually do have at home, which I don't think normal people do. The first of which was a barrel, right? And that's something you've done both in bars and at home.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a really cool piece of equipment, for a visual aid or a visual presentation, and also for aging cocktails. I mean, it's great. The cool thing about it is that when you're in busy service, that could be one of your go-to cocktails because it's quick, it's fast. It's already made. All you have to do is pour it and chill it.
You do have to plan ahead, though, right?
Right, exactly. Because the aging process could definitely take some time.
I remember you would tell me about that process and how you would have to plan 4 to 6 weeks ahead. And that was a real challenge for you working with management on that.
Right, exactly. And then you have to have, if you're doing a barrel program, you have to have multiple barrels.
Right.
Because you always have, for how much we were going through, we only had one cocktail, but we would have 8 barrels in the back for every barrel we had in the front.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was just a never-ending cycle.
When
you finished the barrel in the front of the house, you would swap it out for the next one.
Right. And you would just rotate. And so you would have this constant cycle.
But like you said, the benefit of that, of course, is that it's a barrel-aged cocktail. So the cocktail's already made. You really just need to chill it down.
Right.
Do you just pour it into a mixing glass and chill it with ice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we would batch them out and put them into bottles. And then we would also have some in the barrel. So on the slower days, when you're not kind of getting crazy in the weeds, you would pour it right out of the barrel because it's kind of a cool show.
Right.
But when you're, filling 4 or 5 orders at once, you could grab the bottle of batched out barrel aged whatever and pour it right over ice and just chill it down. So,
well, if you're not going through enough volume, of course, there's a risk of over aging too, right?
Right, exactly.
So you've got to get it out of the barrel so it doesn't get too far.
Exactly. So you really have to have a rhythm to this process.
So before you do this kind of a program, definitely put some thought into how much you're actually going to go through, because you have to think ahead.
Right.
And this is something that it's hard to sort of step into slowly.
Yeah, and at the worst, at the very least, you could just stop the aging by putting it into a glass bottle, and that'll just keep it from overaging.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned one other thing too.
This is my personal favorite. Can you remember what it is?
Oh, I do remember this one. The carbonating machine.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
It's so much fun.
And I think it's hilarious that we call it the carbonating machine. It's basically just a valve and a hose and a tank of CO2, right?
That's pretty much it. Yeah, it's a valve, regulator, like a can of CO2, and then you just put a Coke bottle at the end to pressurize it. It's awesome. It's so great. I love that.
We definitely did a video. You definitely did a video on how to make one of these of your own. I'm definitely going to put that in the show notes. But I like this guy because we used to have a soda stream, but it ended up costing more than our mortgage every month because those canisters were so expensive.
Right.
And you had to trade them out, and they were proprietary. We tried all the little nozzles that theoretically let you use traditional CO2 tanks, but at the end of the day, I think your carbonation machine, which A, has a better name, and B, definitely worked better.
Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely a good thing to have, and it's fun for the kids. They love it.
Please do not give this to your children. Do not listen to Chris. That is so dangerous. Yeah, definitely respect the carbonation machine. It is a dangerous tool, but on the other hand, you can do all sorts of stuff. I mean, we've carbonated all kinds of good stuff in there.
Right, and this is the one that I found on Jeffrey Morgenthaler's site as well. So another great resource. He's
perfect.
He does a lot of great work, so definitely check out his blog.
And we'll include that link as well.
Cool.
Awesome. So yeah, there's a overview of the sort of unconventional tools, equipment, things stolen from the kitchen, cheesecloth, all that good stuff that Chris has used in his cocktail bar. But I have a sneaky suspicion that there's other stuff out there that our listeners know about. So I would love to hear it. If you know of something that you have used, either stolen from the kitchen or stolen from your bar, definitely let us know in the show notes over at mixologytalk.com/54. And aside from that, definitely leave us a review on iTunes if this is a podcast that you are enjoying. We would really appreciate it, and it does help other people find us. So until next week, have a good one.
Cheers.
Cheers.